What up? Wade here, coming at you from Santa Monica, California. End of September, nice high 70s, not a cloud in the sky. It's like this every day. I love it. You know, I've only been out here a few months, and they say the whole first year feels like vacation, and that's definitely the case. And so it's interesting, like, you know, me moving out here. I came from Chicago, was there for about 5 or 6 years, and I actually came out here during the wintertime, and man, the weather was great. But even more than that, I just met so many successful people. I was meeting all these like super successful influencers, internet marketers, entrepreneurs. I was like, this is where I need to be. Felt like I was living my life in a vacuum in Chicago. They're great friends, but just not the people that had the same sort of on the wavelength when it came to business. And so I talked to my girlfriend, she was totally on board. And then after that, I'm like, okay, now we got a lot of things to think about. You know, everyone wants to come out here, so it's definitely not cheap. And on top of that, it's gonna spin around a little bit. You know, I hadn't had a car for 12 years. So I'm like, okay, gotta grab a car. It's not a small purchase. It's not like getting a bike or something, you know? And so I remember one of my early mentors, early marketing mentors, his name's Dan Kennedy. He talks about a story with John Lennon. So John Lennon, you know, in the Beatles, at one point he's talking to Paul McCartney, and he's like, John, or he's like, Paul, his name's John, Paul, let's write us a swimming pool. And so what he meant by that was, instead of paying for something like that, getting a swimming pool for their house, instead you just write a song, and your fans happily take care of it for you. And so it's not like some unethical thing. What it is money is just an exchange of value. And so think about, okay, just create some value, and then you get you know, something in exchange for that. And so I thought, okay, well, how could I do that coming out here? And you know, if I think about business in the past, if I look a few years back, man, it was tough. Like for me to even create any sort of new revenue stream, it was like epic product launch or, you know, some marketing funnel, complicated marketing funnel where there's tripwire and all these sales pages, landing pages, you know, the programming related to that. And that to me was just, you know, it took too long. You know, I was like, I gotta get out here. This is amazing. There's so many people. I need to get out here fast. And so I was like, okay, what else could I do? And, you know, if I look at, you know, how my company's evolved, a lot of what I do today, the main thing really is I have the thing called the Chosen 20. And so that's my, you know, top 20 clients. Many of them I've been working with for years. You know, if you look at the sort of 80-20 principle and seeing, you know, where most of your sort of value in the company is, I know for me, it's on the top tier level. It's on the highest level clients. And so instead of building this long marketing funnel and creating a product, I'm like, okay, how could I do something fast? And so what I did, I just create one email, and I'll show you in a second what that email was and the strategy behind it. But in that email, I just kind of said, hey, what's up? Let's get on the phone. Let's talk. Let's chat some biz. Let's chat life. And through that, I got on the phone with a couple people, you know, clarified what their pain points were, you know, really got into what they ultimately wanted, what sort of vision they wanted. And then it was just a quick, easy question at the end of, you want some help with that? And at the time, I didn't even have a name for the product or anything. It's called the Freedom Accelerator now, but at the time, I'm like, I don't even know what this thing is or anything like that. But what you just talked about, I'll help you with that. And I had enough people that said, hell yeah, let's do this, that not only did it completely take care of my rent for at least the next 6 months, but I had enough kind of one-time payments to completely go to the bank, get the money out, boom, take it, get that car, completely taken care of by my clients. And so think for yourself, like imagine if you never had to worry about those big payments anymore, and you had a strategy to get your customers to take care of it for you. And maybe it's not even like, you know, buying a new car. Maybe it's just something like, you know, taking care of your student loans, or, you know, getting a little bit nicer place, getting that second bedroom, or being able to kind of finally have enough profit so that when you pay for some Facebook ads or whatever type of advertising you're doing, it actually becomes profitable. And so what we're gonna do, you know, it's kind of hot out here. I shouldn't have worn a black shirt today. I'd love to kind of go inside and we'll check out the whiteboard. And what I'm gonna do is break down the process of how, what I call the 4 stages of sales seduction, really flipping the script so that you can build this type of thing in your business. And trust me, I don't care if you're thinking, okay, well, I'm not a coach, I'm not a consultant. This is for any type of business. I don't care if you got an e-commerce business, I don't care if you got a physical product business, and of course, coaches, consultants, even software. I've had some clients apply it there too. And so let's head on in and get to the whiteboard. Okay, so now what I want to do, use the whiteboard here and get into what I call the 4 stages of sales seduction. And so where this comes from, my background is as a dating coach. And so I started off in 2007 doing that. And then what happened, I had a little falling out in 2013. I talk about the whole story on the webinar, so I won't get into it here. But I had to start from scratch. All my social media starting over. I used my real name. I previously went by Brad. That's a whole nother story for a different day. And so all of a sudden, there I am, Wade Alters. It's my real name, starting from scratch. And I did what I knew best, which previously was a lot of really successful product launches, these epic product launches. But something's different when all of a sudden, you don't have a brand and you don't know how to do paid traffic or anything like that. It doesn't matter how great your marketing is, how great your product is, if not enough people see the offer. And so what happened is somewhere along the way, I started to get a taste of working with some one-on-one clients. And it was amazing to me to see how much faster you can grow your business in $3,000 chunks instead of these little $7 chunks or $47 a month sort of chunks. And all of a sudden I got super excited. I'm like, oh my God, high ticket sales. I need to call everyone. So anyone that tried to get on my list, I tried to get their phone number. I tried to call them up. I was getting people, they weren't showing up to appointments. They were flaking. I even had people sometimes that call up. They're like, fuck you. How do you get my number? And very quickly I thought, sales is not fun. It's not for me. It's just not a part of who I am. I think, I really consider myself a learned extrovert anyways. And when it comes to being assertive, that was something that, being in a nightclub and meeting beautiful women, you had to learn to be assertive. But it was definitely something that I cultivated. It wasn't something that came naturally to me. So sales was another one of those things that I thought, okay, maybe this just isn't for me. And I can hire someone or something like that, but something's off here. What I realized after the fact was, somewhere in the throes of that sort of frustration, I thought, you know what? What would you do when it came to picking up a woman or approaching a woman? And I realized what I was doing with sales, this sort of pushy sales tactic approach, was what you would never want to do when it came to meeting somebody of the opposite sex. They always say when you meet a woman, you never want to put her up on a pedestal. And it's like, the hardest time to kind of talk to girls is when you haven't been with one for a while. It's the same thing with sales. If you haven't had a sale in a while, you really need it, and you're putting that up on the sales call. You're like, I need this so much. This is the solution to all my problems. That's going to lead to, even if you say the right things, even if you have the right eye contact, tonality, it's going to come through. And so what happened is I shifted and I thought, okay, how would I apply the principles when it came to male-female social dynamics, persuasion and influence, and if I use that in a sales process? And that's where I really got into the seduction, the seducing of the prospect, the seducing of the customer. And that's what ultimately led to 4 different stages. So let me get into the first stage here. The first stage is something you've probably heard of before. My handwriting is not the best. Lefty. Put in a little square. Boom. Social proof. Make sure that looks good. Okay, a little high. Be good for the 4 stages. And so social proof, what this comes down to is, back in my dating days, what would happen, you have a guy, let's say he rolled into a bar. If he had 2 beautiful women next to him, another girl sees that and she goes, she doesn't want to think about that decision. Too much work for her to decide for herself. She just sees that he's with some women. She goes, oh, he must be an attractive male. I should be attractive to him as well. And so when you do this right, when it comes to the sales or the marketing process, what happens is you don't even have a sales call anymore. I call it a strategy session. And when you do this right, I remember for myself, I have a new retreat that's happening for the Chosen 20. And so one guy, got on the phone with him. I went through the 4-stage process. Don't assume anything. And at the end of it, I said, how does this sound? And he said, dude, you just could have sent me an email or a link. I was ready to buy from the start. Like, I'm just here. We're just going through the motions. I'm like, I kind of knew that, but that came from the fact that when you have your social proof right. And so how can you apply this? There's 2 different ways. You have symbolism, and then you have stories. So symbolically would be something like, okay, get the Lambo, like a Ty Lopez. All of a sudden you got 6 cars. You have a beautiful house. For me, if I'm getting a little meta here, being on the beach a few blocks away, having kind of the windows open and the doors hopefully doesn't mess with the lighting too much. But hey, that's the life I'm living now. So deal with it. But that's me kind of putting that social proof in there. Not everyone can do something like that. Also, it's something with stories. And so I make sure for myself to tell a lot of stories related to, how I travel the world a lot. I've been in over 40 countries, but also stories related to my clients, whether success stories or also just seeding in what the kind of different products that I have. So something like, I already mentioned it once and I just do it on autopilot at this point, talking about the Chosen 20. For me, things I always say, it's, it's very expensive. It's over $10,000 to get started. You got to commit to at least 6 months. It's always full. There's always a wait list. It's the Chosen 20. There's 20 people in it and they're all very successful people. And most of them have been with me for years. And so I don't usually say it that directly, although I'm trying to, make this as overt as possible here. But what do you want to think about for yourself? Or what are a couple things that you could start planting seeds, and then in every Facebook post, every email, every video that you put out, every podcast, somewhere in there, you kind of seed in one of those things. So that way, by the time you get to talking to this person, by the time that they're ready, they already know what it is. It's not like, hey, all of a sudden you're pulling the curtains and you're like, boom, and you're coming in with this huge sort of aggressive sale or this assertive move here. They're already primed properly for everything, And so we're going to go through that. It's like a slippery slope through the whole process here. But the second one, I'm just going to put the app. The application of glory, the app. And so what you want to do as you're doing this in all your free content, you want to kind of be very subtle. You don't need a lot of like strong call to actions like click the button below to sign up for my one-on-one coaching, because that's too, you're staying in that sort of aggressive. It's like, again, you're putting the girl up on the pedestal. You don't want that. Instead, what you want to do is how do you suck them in? And so by having an application process, what that says is, hey, you know what? I don't work everyone that I talk to. I don't work with everyone. You got to be a good fit. So first, fill out this quick application and see if we're great to work together here. And so there's a couple questions that I think are important. I've tested everything from, we had over 10 pages of questions at one point on the application. It was great because it really, if they got through it, that was awesome. They were ready to buy for sure. But very few people made it all the way through. So, that was too much. We brought it back. After a while, we only did 1 or 2 questions, but it didn't set the frame well enough. So instead, what I found is you can have 4 specific questions. And in the webinar, I talk about what exactly those 4 questions are that really do flip the script and get them selling you on the process. One big one, what you want to do, I'll kind of give you 2 little hints. Like I said, you'll get these in better detail in the webinar. It comes down to getting them to visualize what life would be like after you've worked together. So something in the, I don't have it verbatim here, but something to the things, okay, if we, for me, I sell a lot of like 6-month or 12-month packages. So let's say 1 year from now, what would a 10 out of 10 look like if we work together and, there we are and you're like, hey, Wade, XYZ happened and, I'm just so happy that you were able to help me with that. And what I'm doing is, one, I'm just getting them to visualize what that looks like. A lot of people, they don't even know. They're just like, they're in so much pain and they're focused on the pain that after the app alone, they're like, wow, I've found out a lot of things about myself through this process even. But more importantly, from a persuasion standpoint, is it gets them imagining working with you and what that would be like to really psych them up. Again, so by the time you get on the phone with them, they're already ready to go. So like I said, we'll dive into more detail with that one on the webinar. Third one is the strategy session. Hopefully my pen doesn't die here, and hopefully I can spell properly. We'll call it SESH, since we're in California here. Yeah, all right, so strategy session. You never have a sales call again. What it is you have a specific sort of conversation. It's just like a coaching conversation. And so I'm using the example here for my business, but like I said, you can do the same thing. If you have an e-commerce business, I have one client who has, he sells binoculars and sort of survival tools and stuff like that, and he doesn't even do the calls. But he sets it up where after they buy, all of a sudden an email goes off, they get on the phone with a support person, they go through the same process, they do the application. And somewhere in the marketing materials, they talk about these sort of retreats that they do and things like that. And then when they get to the strategy session, somebody gets on the phone. The big 2 kind of levers that you're playing with, one is you want to dive as deep as you can into the pain and really crank it up and go, okay, what does that mean? What is that? How has your life changed because of that? What does it cause you? Let's say, for business or something, like, how does it feel like every day going in, when Monday comes and you're like, oh my God, or Friday and you just want to leave, or that manager that just totally disrespects for you, or you have no respect for, and like, man, you just see everyone on Instagram and they're doing all these other things. How does that make you feel? And from that place, they're like, and that's really the launch pad for them. And then on the other side of things, you really want to suck them up and clarify the vision, because a lot of times people are just so, like I said, stuck in the pain that they forget about, or they don't even think about what they want. And so really get them being like, well, what would your life be like if you actually achieve this? So again, I'll use myself, the business example. Like, imagine if you did have a successful business, or imagine if you did have a sales process that worked, and you were able to kind of you set it and forget it, and your businesses grew, and the profits you had were enough that you only needed to work a few days a week. You could quit your job and just do this and kind of do it from anywhere because it's online. If that's the vision they have, and that is for a lot of the clients that I work with, Then all of a sudden they're like, whoa, yeah, that sounds awesome. And then it just really leads to a very nice question of, so would you like some help with that? And usually at this point they say, absolutely. If you really kind of create the launch pad, you suck them up, and it's like I said, a diving board almost, like whoop, they're bouncing off. And all of a sudden they're like, yes, please help me through this process. And what that does, if you do that right, it really doesn't, you don't need to sell. You don't really need to sell at all. And that process alone is a very cool thing, to where even if they're like not ready at the time, it leads to all the time I have people 3 months later, 5 months later, and like, dude, I'm ready now. Everything is set up. And so it's really good, just like I said, it's a great way to just offer value. And it's totally different than just like a sales call. Like, what do you want? Like, okay, I'm gonna push you, and kind of doing the hardcore tonality and all that sort of straight line persuasion stuff. All that stuff is unnecessary. But it comes, you have to really go through the stages and kind of build everything properly around this. And then the fourth stage, I kind of already mentioned this, the close. And really what I say is what come down to, this is the same thing when it comes to, back when I was helping guys with their dating lives, is like, at some point, you got to go for the close. And so it doesn't need to be scary. It doesn't need to be a scary process. What happens is when you have a process, when you have a framework, it changes everything. And so a great example, let's say, I love just using dating analogies for everything. So you're going to hear this a lot throughout these videos and in the webinar, because I think there's always a great dating example for everything in business, especially in sales. And so a great example of this is when you go on that first date with some girl. And so a lot of times, if you're just kind of learning the skills of how to attract women, all of a sudden you kind of trade up and you get this girl, you're like, oh my God, I've never been with a woman this beautiful before. And so you might be nervous about, the woman and feeling like, do I deserve this woman? But what you do is when you have a proper system in place, the system gives you confidence. And so I had, back when I used to teach this stuff, even for myself, it was like I went to the same place when I go on a date with a girl, same place, same bartender. I knew like at one point I'd go up to the bathroom and I'd go pay so there wasn't awkwardness. And all of a sudden I'd have this smooth thing. We get home and everything, I'd have some, like a glass of wine or some wine set up. Or everything was set up to the T. And so there were times where I'm like, man, this girl is absolutely drop dead gorgeous. And I'm getting nervous there, but I'm like, just execute the system. Execute the process, go through the stages, and that's what gives you confidence. So you might be thinking, oh man, I'm not good at sales, or oh, I get too nervous. I don't think I could ever do something like that. The confidence comes from the system. And so what I want to do in the next video, what we're really going to get into, is dive into kind of some specifics here and show a couple examples of some other people using this. And so what I want, make sure, get on that webinar. Also, I got the cash flow pyramid. If you show up, it's a $2,000 special, but you got to be there live on the webinar. This is not something, I'm going to export the people that show up and then email them that way. Make sure to show up. It's going to be awesome. And then, yeah, make sure to also check out the next video. As always, enjoy.